Was it bad luck or something darker guarding the boy king, a story etched in gold, wrapped in shadow? It begins in the dust of Egypt in a valley consecrated to the dead, the Valley of the Kings. For centuries it guarded its secrets jealously. But in 1922, one of its greatest secrets was disturbed, the tomb of a boy king, Tutankhamun. The world was captivated by the treasures found within, but something else emerged from that silent chamber, a whisper, a legend, a curse. This is a story of discovery, death, and the enduring power of a legend. We must peel back the layers of time. We must sift through the sands of speculation and fact. The tale of Tutankhamun's curse is not just about ancient Egypt, it is about us. Our fascination with the unknown, our fear of the dark, and our deep-seated need to believe. Is there a line between the world of the living and the realm of the dead? And what happens when that line is crossed? The people who crossed it paid a price. Who or what exacted that payment? Let us journey back and search for an answer. The tale begins not with a curse, but with a dream. Howard Carter, an English archaeologist, a man possessed by an idea. He believed a lost pharaoh's tomb lay hidden beneath the valley floor. For years he searched, funded by his patron, Lord Carnarvon. The 4th of November, 1922, a date that would echo through history. A water boy working on Carter's excavation stumbled. His foot caught on something hard, buried just beneath the surface. It was not a rock, it was a step. A single man-made step cut into the bedrock. Carter was summoned immediately. His heart must have been pounding. This was it. This was the moment he had dreamed of for years. With painstaking care, his team cleared the sand and rubble. The single step became a flight of stairs descending into the darkness. 16 steps in total, leading down to a sealed doorway. The seal was intact. It bore the royal insignia of the necropolis. The tension was almost unbearable. Lord Carnarvon was in England. Carter sent him an urgent telegram. At last have made wonderful discovery in valley. A magnificent tomb with seals intact, recovered same for your arrival. Congratulations. Carnarvon, Lady Evelyn Herbert, rushed to Egypt. They arrived weeks later on the 23rd of November. Together they stood before the sealed doorway. Carter, Carnarvon, Lady Evelyn. They were on the threshold of history. Carter's team broke through the first doorway only to find a corridor filled with rubble. At the end of the corridor was a second sealed door. On the 26th of November, Carter made a small breach in the top left-hand corner of this second door. He held a candle and peered inside. The air that escaped was hot, smelling of ancient oils and perfumes. For a moment he was struck silent. Lord Carnarvon, standing anxiously behind him, could bear the silence no longer. "Can you see anything?" he asked. Carter's reply has become legendary. "Yes," he breathed, "wonderful things." What he saw was a sight no modern human had ever witnessed. An antechamber piled high with the treasures of a pharaoh. Golden chariots, intricate couches, alabaster vases, strange animal statues, a jumble of unimaginable wealth. It was a moment frozen in time, the culmination of a lifetime's obsession, the discovery of the tomb of Tutankhamun, KV 62. It was the most intact pharaoh's burial ever found. The world went wild with the news. This was more than just archaeology. It was a resurrection. The idea of a curse did not spring from the tomb itself. There was no grand inscription on the outer door warning of doom. Instead, the legend was born in the pages of newspapers. Journalists from around the globe had descended on Luxor, hungry for stories. But Lord Carnarvon had signed an exclusive deal with the Times of London. This left other reporters out in the cold. No access, no news. Frustrated, they needed something to write about, and so they began to create their own stories. They drew on the public's fascination with spiritualism and the occult. The idea of a pharaoh's curse was the perfect angle. One of the key figures in this was the novelist Marie Corelli. She was a popular writer of mystical, sensational fiction. Soon after the tomb was opened, she sent a letter to a newspaper quoting from an obscure ancient text. The text allegedly warned that the most dire punishment would follow anyone who entered a sealed tomb. She predicted that Lord Carnarvon would not survive his transgression. Her letter was published and widely circulated. It planted a seed of fear that would soon grow into a towering legend. The media fanned the flames relentlessly. Reporters began to invent details. They wrote of an inscription supposedly found above the tomb's entrance. "Death shall come on swift wings to him who disturbs the peace of the king," it was said to have read. No such inscription ever existed. It was a complete fabrication, but it was a brilliant piece of storytelling. It was short, memorable, and terrifying. It became the unofficial motto of the curse. The story took on a life of its own, spreading from newspaper to newspaper, from country to country. The world was now watching the excavation with a new sense of dread. This new narrative transformed the discovery. It was no longer just a scientific endeavor, it was a gothic horror story playing out in real time. Every minor incident, every illness, every misfortune that befell anyone connected to the tomb was now seen through the lens of the curse. The public was primed to believe. They wanted to believe. The story of a vengeful mummy was far more exciting than the slow, methodical work of archaeological preservation. The stage was set. All the legend needed now was its first victim, and it would not have to wait long. Lord Carnarvon, the man who funded the entire expedition, became the curse's first and most famous victim. In early 1923, just a few months after the tomb was opened, he was bitten on the cheek by a mosquito. Later, while shaving, he accidentally sliced open the bite with his razor. The cut became infected. It seemed like a minor, everyday accident, but the infection worsened. He developed blood poisoning, which then turned into pneumonia. His health rapidly declined. On the 5th of April 1923, in a hotel room in Cairo, George Herbert, the 5th Earl of Carnarvon, died. He was only 56 years old, but what happened at the precise moment he died turned a tragedy into a legend. According to reports, at the exact moment of his death, all the lights in Cairo mysteriously went out. The city was plunged into darkness for several minutes. At the same time, back in England on his country estate, Highclere Castle, Carnarvon's favourite dog, a fox terrier named Susie, let out a howl and dropped dead. The connection was too perfect, too cinematic to be ignored. A mosquito bite, a citywide blackout, a dying dog. The press had its proof. The curse was real. Marie Corelli's prediction had come true. The story became an international sensation. The death of a wealthy English lord linked to an ancient pharaoh's tomb was the stuff of headlines. It confirmed everyone's darkest fears. The details were repeated and embellished. The public was utterly convinced. This was no mere coincidence. This was the pharaoh's revenge. The fact that Lord Carnarvon had been in poor health for years, with a history of lung problems from a serious car accident, was conveniently overlooked. The narrative of the curse was simply too powerful, too compelling to be challenged by mundane facts. An even more chilling detail emerged later. When the mummy of Tutankhamun was finally unwrapped in 1925, examiners found a lesion on the king's left cheek. It was in the exact same spot as the mosquito bite that had led to Lord Carnarvon's death. Was this the final, irrefutable proof? The mark of the pharaoh reaching across 3 millennia to claim his victim? For believers in the curse, this was the smoking gun. It sealed the legend forever. The story of Lord Carnarvon's death became the cornerstone of the curse, a cautionary tale whispered for generations. The pharaoh had claimed his first, but he would not be the last. After Lord Carnarvon's death, the world watched with morbid fascination. Who would be next? The curse, it seemed, was just getting started. A list of victims began to grow, each death adding another layer to the terrifying legend. George J. Gould visited the tomb in 1923. Shortly after his visit, he caught a cold that became pneumonia. He died within months. Was it a common illness or the pharaoh's vengeance? To the public, the answer was clear. The curse had claimed another. Aubrey Herbert was present at the opening of the burial chamber. He suffered from a degenerative eye condition. His doctor suggested pulling out all his teeth to help his eyesight. He developed blood poisoning and died 5 months after Carnarvon. Another coincidence? Or another link in the chain? Prince Ali Kamal Fahmy Bey also visited the tomb. In 1923, he was shot and killed by his wife in a London hotel. The curse, it was said, could drive people to madness and violence. Even those not present at the opening seemed at risk. Sir Archibald Douglas Reed x-rayed the mummy. He fell ill the next day and died 3 days later. Richard Bethell, Carter's secretary, was found smothered in 1929. His father, Lord Westbury, reportedly threw himself from his 7th-floor apartment. The hearse carrying his body was said to have run over and killed a young boy on its way to the cemetery. The stories became more elaborate, a cascade of tragedy and misfortune. Each death was reported with sensational detail. The numbers grew. By the late 1920s, newspapers claimed that over a dozen, and some even said over 20 people connected to the tomb had met untimely ends. The curse seemed to have a long reach and a patient memory. It didn't matter if you were an archaeologist, a financier, a prince, or a secretary. If you disturbed the king's peace, you were marked. The public was captivated by the grim tally. The boy king's tomb was no longer a place of wonder. It had become a place of death. So what do we make of this terrifying list of deaths? Is there a rational, scientific explanation? Or are we truly dealing with an ancient supernatural force? Let's start with the most obvious question. Did the people who entered the tomb die at an unusually high rate? In 1980, an Australian researcher named Mark Nelson decided to investigate. He conducted a study, a kind of scientific post-mortem on the curse itself. He looked at the 25 Westerners who were present when the tomb was opened. He tracked how long they lived and what they died of. His findings were, honestly, pretty surprising. Nelson discovered that there was no statistical difference in the lifespan of those exposed to the curse compared to a control group of people of the same age and background. On average, the 25 people present at the opening lived to be 70 years old. This is a perfectly normal lifespan, especially for the early 20th century. Lord Carnarvon died at 56, but others lived long and healthy lives. Lady Evelyn Herbert, Carnarvon's daughter, one of the first 3 people to enter the tomb, lived to be 79, dying in 1980. The man who discovered it all, Howard Carter, lived for another 17 years, dying in 1939 at the age of 64 from lymphoma. The curse strangely seemed to spare its main target, but what about the specific causes of death? Could there have been something toxic inside the tomb? This is a popular theory. A tomb sealed for over 3,000 years could certainly contain harmful substances. Scientists have suggested that ancient bacteria, viruses, molds trapped inside the sealed environment could have been released when the tomb was opened. These dormant pathogens, for which modern humans would have no immunity, could have caused severe, fast-acting illnesses. The air inside the tomb could have been thick with fungal spores like aspergillus, which can cause allergic reactions and lung infections, especially in people with weakened immune systems. This toxic mold theory is plausible. Lord Carnarvon, with his pre-existing lung damage from his car crash, would have been particularly vulnerable to such an infection. A mosquito bite becoming infected and leading to fatal pneumonia could well have been triggered or exacerbated by exposure to airborne pathogens inside the tomb. So, in a way, the tomb could have been deadly, but not because of a supernatural curse. It could have been a case of ancient biology, not ancient magic. The curse might have been a microscopic organism, a silent and invisible killer lying in wait for millennia. Let's look more closely at the evidence. The scientific explanations provide a compelling alternative to the supernatural. But what about the other strange events? The Cairo blackout, the death of the dog, these are harder to explain with science alone. However, a closer look reveals that these stories too may be less mysterious than they appear. The citywide blackout in Cairo, for instance. While it makes for a fantastic story, power outages were actually quite common in Cairo in the 1920s. The city's electrical infrastructure was notoriously unreliable. It's highly likely that the blackout was simply a coincidence, its timing embellished to fit the growing narrative of the curse. The story of Lord Carnarvon's dog Susie is also difficult to verify. The tale seems to have originated with a single journalist and was then repeated without question. There are no independent, reliable sources to confirm it. It may be just that, a story. Many of the other deaths attributed to the curse also fall apart under scrutiny. Richard Bethel's death was ruled a suicide. His father, Lord Westbury, was said to be in deep despair over his son's death, which provides a tragic but rational explanation for his own suicide. The chain of events is heartbreaking but not necessarily supernatural. We must also consider the power of suggestion. This is something psychologists call the nocebo effect, the opposite of the placebo effect. If you believe something will harm you, it can actually cause physical harm. People who believed they were cursed might have been under immense psychological stress, weakened their immune systems, made them more accident-prone, led them to make poor decisions that resulted in their deaths. The curse, once it was widely reported, became a self-fulfilling prophecy for some. The story of Tutankhamun's curse is a perfect example of how myth and history can become tangled together. It shows how a powerful narrative can grip the public imagination and become accepted as fact. The process is fascinating. It starts with a real event, the discovery of a magnificent tomb, a dash of popular superstition, Victorian mummies and spiritualism, a sprinkle of media sensationalism, newspapers and headlines, and finally, a tragic coincidence, the untimely death of a key figure. Once combined, the myth takes on a life of its own. It is told and retold, each telling adding a new detail or victim. Contradictory facts are ignored, like archaeologists who lived long lives. Ambiguous events, a power cut, get reinterpreted. The myth grows more solid than the history. It offers a simple, exciting explanation for complex, random events. Believing in a vengeful pharaoh feels easier than accepting messy coincidence and illness. This isn't unique to Tutankhamun. Haunted battlefields, cursed diamonds, phantom ships, humans are born storytellers. We see patterns, find meaning in chaos. A curse is a powerful pattern. It promises order, even malevolent order. It implies consequences, ancient rules not to be broken. That comfort beats the idea of random death. So the curse tells us more about the modern world than ancient Egypt. It reflects 1920s anxieties and fascinations, an age between ancient and modern, science and superstition. The tomb discovery was an archaeological triumph, but the story people loved was ancient magic. The myth let modern people taste the supernatural while living in a rational world. It became modern folklore, a ghost story for the industrial age. A century has passed since Howard Carter peered into that dark tomb. Science has largely debunked the curse. Historians have unpicked the media hype, and yet the legend endures. Why are we still so fascinated by this story? Perhaps it is because the story taps into something deep within us, a primal fear of disturbing the dead, a respect for the sanctity of the grave. Every culture has rules about honoring those who have passed. The story of Tutankhamun's curse is a dramatic cautionary tale about the consequences of breaking those rules. A hidden treasure, a boy king, an ancient mystery, a deadly curse. It's a plot that Hollywood could only dream of. The glamour of the 1920s, aristocratic explorers, exotic locations, the obsessed archaeologist Carter, the doomed Lord Carnarvon, the silent, enigmatic pharaoh himself. It is a story that is simply too good not to be true, even if we know rationally that it probably isn't. We enjoy being scared. The curse provides a safe historical thrill. Furthermore, the curse keeps the mystery of ancient Egypt alive. It reminds us that for all our scientific knowledge, there are still things we do not fully understand about the past. The pyramids, the Sphinx, the mummies. Tutankhamun's curse is the ultimate expression of this mystery. It suggests that the ancient Egyptians possessed a knowledge or power that we have lost. It keeps the past from becoming just a collection of dusty artifacts in a museum. It makes it feel alive and dangerous. In the end, whether the curse was real or not is almost beside the point. Its true power lies not in its ability to kill, but in its ability to captivate. It is a testament to the enduring power of a good story. It has ensured that Tutankhamun, a minor king who ruled for a short time and was quickly forgotten, has achieved a kind of immortality that far surpasses that of other, more powerful pharaohs. His treasures are magnificent.